us to choose, even if we spend thousands on it.
UI,
Yes?
are you saying that that COVID-19 is one of the diseases that needs prolonged life expectancy?
Okay, so as we all know, there are stages to COVID-19. There are certain patients whose immunity is not as strong. Thus, they went into a coma, or even the doctors have to put them into sleep. Those are the kind of people that we are talking about, not the ones that still have the chance to live. People who are removed from subsidy are only for those who are nearing death, not people who can still very much likely live after being treated. That's why we have to put the mechanism
Bruh, this is a goofy. What the heck?
that their case can be counted. Like I said, the total cost for the government is way too much. Those money that we spend on the people, the patients that are nearing death, can be used to help those who have a chance to live. As much as it hurts to say, as the government, that we still care about those and we still provide as much as we can. But if there are still no chances seen from the rate of living, then we have no other choice but to remove the subsidies for the sake of others. Because in real life, we cannot focus simply on those who doesn't have the chance anymore. Basically, they are lying on their deathbed, counting their days. Would you stay and look at your loved ones suffering, knowing that you cannot help, even with the amount of money you gain or you give? In my opinion, in our government side, we believe that a proper way to end their suffering is by slowly taking away the subsidies and see if there is a chance for them to live even after the government took out the subsidies. Then it's good. But if something like that cannot happen, yes.
So you're saying you want people to let them suffer like that, but not their house?
Suffering from death is different from suffering while you are living. Let's say you are living and you are suffering. That hurts much more than suffering in death. Death is the end of suffering. How can I say this? Basically, someone who is basically living on wires, they feel the pain. They know they cannot be helped by their loved ones. They know they will leave their loved ones sooner or later. So why let them be in their emotional state and physical state and let them suffer when we can simply end it by ending all their suffering? It's not that we completely take it away. The family can still have an option whether or not to support the patient still or to give it up. That's all from me. Thank you.
The Deputy Prime Minister spent 6 minutes for peace activists. Then, to continue our debate today, I would like to call the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Mr. Shahmi Yusof Bedouin.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Right. So, from the government side, we've been hearing the specifics of suffering and the chances of survival. Now, the government mainly thinks about what happens if they don't survive. What happens if there are no chances? That is some negative effects. What about if they survive? What if they survive? Right. So, from to start off, I will giving my rebuttals. Right. So, the government said that because of now, we need to let go and remove the subsidies given for medical treatment because it's cost too much. When they said it's too much, this doesn't explain what and how. It is too general. Whereas we explain that it is for society, for the poor middle rich. So from here you could see that the governments have some flaws in their argument and their points. To my second rebuttal is they said that even if even if the government side gives the treatment to the patient, yes, they survive, but they will suffer, and they will suffer. Then the family has to let go, which is a better option, and that is said by them. But that is what if led to the death. But what if the long term is they survive? What if they are able to make out of it? Because some people, or the poor people, right, some of them work while making living. While making living. For example, like they are working at a low class level work, and suddenly they are diagnosed. What happened to them? They are supporting the development of the country itself. If the government doesn't give the treatment, how they can continue? So yeah, continue with your plan. Yes.
Thing is, the stated by her is that people who are nearing the death, it is saying that the ratio of those patients who are going to die very much exceeds by a million compared to people who survive. For example, absolutely critical heart disease.
Right. So, in the people who are diagnosed with this kind of disease, such as leukemia, kidney failure, or Parkinson's, they need to have supporting treatments. They need to have medical treatment that prolong their life. And this
I don't know how to use
also
this
apply
thing.
to people, not only to
Hopefully this isn't
the
the
poor, but to have people with the genetic inheritance. With genetic inheritance, meaning it is not transmittable diseases. It doesn't get to the someone. It's they themselves that got the disease. Because we are trying to, we not abolishing subsidies, but reducing revenue by looking at the status to be fair to all the patients, regarding to the rich, to the poor, and the middle class. Right. So my next rebuttals is they also said that during COVID, yes, we get vaccines, but some of them are gone. Some of them are able to cure, but regarding to their immunity, right? Because some of them have strong immunity, some of them have less. But this is not a transmissible disease, as we said before, right? Yeah.
I believe I didn't state medical cure, but rather medical treatments. I believe I didn't state medical cure, but rather medical treatments.
Sorry. So, for example, they said about medical treatment, like they told something just now. Yes, but the immunity that we got, the fact that we got, it's not a transmissible disease. We are saying about the non-transmissible diseases, the one that genetic inheritance that people they got. Right. So to my first that's all for me.
The second speaker spent 5 minutes and 29 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, the honorable adjudicators, let's welcome the third speaker of the government.
Very good morning to the honorable adjudicators. This is Dr. House, honorable speaker, the line of government, and proposition, and members of the floor. Alright, so first I'll begin by rebutting the points of the opposition. Alright, so just now you mentioned that is it wrong for people to live Well, the thing is, you must know that people who are suffering, they are people that are suffering on the deathbed. Don't you feel pity for them? Like they are suffering, and you want them to live more. But if in the end they're gonna suffer, then what's the point? Like let's say they got stage 4 cancer, and they have to go chemotherapy for at least every 3 months, and eventually they still are gonna die. Alright, like people with stage 4 cancer are guaranteed to death, and even with chemotherapy, it is only expected to increase their life expectancy by a year or 2. But
Your eye. Are you saying?
right, eyes please. Yes.
Your eye. Are you saying that there are no patients that have cured from cancer?
Okay, so that's the thing. I wouldn't say they are not cured, but they are still suffering. Alright, you should know they suffer. They at least will live a year or 2, but still in the end they die very early. Right. You understand? Right. So now let me continue. Alright, so for the second point, the deputy opposition leader said, poor people are barely making up their living and they need subsidy to pay for the people and they are contributing for the country's development. Alright, so you should know that if the patients are in a very bad stage, alright, like in a very critical condition, like a critical heart disease or lung failure or kidney failure, as you mentioned earlier, even with subsidy, poor people cannot afford to pay the treatment. Alright, because like as those critical diseases will take thousands of money, thousands of ringgits to pay, and even with subsidy, people cannot afford to pay the treatment. Alright, so and let me start off. Yeah. Alright, so as my deputy, my Prime Minister mentioned, that for the first point, he wants to increase the hospital capacity for the people in need. Right. So I highly agree with this point because you see, like especially during the COVID-19 era, there are many different types of COVID-19. Like you have the normal COVID-19, and then you have the COVID Omicron, and so on, those variants. Alright. So there are people who are in very critical condition, and the hospitals are keeping them in the hospital. But there are people who with minor COVID also went to the hospital. And the thing is, people, even with people in critical state, they are already going to die. Alright, and yes, they did pass away. So, but then like what about people with minor COVID? Alright, like people that
I'm
have
so
just
bad at
still
quarantine.
limited. Like
Oh my
we should
god.
know that during the pandemic there are many people who did not get placed in hospitals, alright, and they're forced to stay in the home. And eventually this became very worse for them, and they also lost their life. So this is why I highly agree with the point that is stated by my Prime Minister. Alright, so now let me tell about yes.
In the diseases that suffering at home, the government should give subsidies.
Alright, as my Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, we will give subsidy for people who will live after they are assessed. Alright, after we investigate the disease and we know that they're going to live, we will give subsidy, but we will only remove
Your
subsidy.
eye. How are you going to prove that the person is going to live? In
This
a
is
certain
why
way?
we are going to do medical assessment. We do a medical assessment first to see how worse in the state they are in. Like let's say if the person with COVID already got if their lungs in a critical condition or their heart in a critical condition, they are already guaranteed to lose their life.
I'm talking, you just said that you're going to give subsidies. Isn't the motion talking about that should remove the subsidies?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Remove subsidy for patients who are for patients that are going to lose their life. Right. So I said, as we mentioned earlier, we only provide subsidy with people who are going to live after medical assessment, and only remove subsidy for people who are going to lose their life, who are nearing their death. Alright, which means they are guaranteed to lose their life. Alright, and I'm actually very sorry to say that yes, it is a very cruel thing. Here I sorry, we are rejected. Right, so it is a very cruel thing to remove subsidy for people who are nearing their death. But as my Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, there is nothing we can do. We have to pull the plug because they are nearing their death, and what's the point? Like, they are suffering while they are living, and even with treatment, this could only, as I mentioned earlier, this could only increase their life by a year or two, and they are going to suffer while then. Alright, but if they are suffering while they are nearing their death, this is not much worse. So this is why we have to do this. So in conclusion, as the government should remove the subsidies on medical treatment that prolong life, so that we could give place for the people who actually need medical treatment. So for me, thank you very much.
The first speaker of the formative team spent 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and the honorable educators, this is the first speaker for the formative team, Mr. Maman Akib Rabani.
Alright. COVID-19. The opposition had been repeating over and over how COVID-19 would affect, how they would remove subsidies on medical treatments that prolong life, such as COVID-19, which is ridiculously irrelevant because we see that COVID-19 is not considered as the non-transmissible diseases because we, as the government ourselves, we consider that we are not abolishing subsidies, but we are actually trying to reduce the subsidies that will be further explained in my summarization. And we, as a government, we do not consider that these diseases, such as COVID-19, should have that COVID-19 is actually a disease that should have overseen constantly. Alright. I'll begin.
In no part of our whole debate does it mention about the life through the disease that is transmittable or not. It is life who is on the wire, who is on life support, who is going to die. Thank you.
Alright. We are justifying because the opposition side did not mention anything about how non-transmissible diseases and how transmissible diseases could be categorized, as we, as the government, should remove subsidies on medical treatments that prolong life on certain diseases or not. Other than that, I'll continue with my rebuttals. The opposition kept glorifying that based on the status quo that subsidies are for everyone, which they themselves did not being sensitive, because the first, as the Prime Minister of the opposition team had said, that they would assess the conditions of those patients first before taking into account to remove the subsidies or not, which is obviously out of their mind. And other than that, they also mentioned about how these patients who are in the brink of death, they would simply pull their plugs and not thinking about how they disperse, which had been mentioned by the leader of the opposition, which the poor people also had rights as a human. Alright? And other than that, they also mentioned about how the hospital capacity on all over the stuff of COVID-19, and do we actually believe, can't we actually believe that not all people are sick all the time? And they also mentioned that merely to
that they are giving hospital capacity just merely to people who have non-prolonged diseases. And also they mentioned about these patients have zero chances to live. And they also mentioned, as the Prime Minister said, sadly they had to agree with us, the government team, which we are removing the subsidies for, which we are not removing the subsidies for those patients with prolonged diseases. And that they are referring those people who are in despair and they are using their mechanism wrongly. And the deputy prime minister also mentioned about COVID-19 again, and how COVID-19 is near death and they are not taking into consideration, and also again about zero absolute chance of the patients to live. And how about people who miraculously cured from cancer? Is it miracle, or is it they endeavored so much to bear their suffering and to be supported by the government to give some subsidies for them? And isn't cancer one of the diseases that needs prolonged diseases? Yes. And also, the Deputy Prime Minister also mentioned about the critical heart disease, which in the first place, the person must have been diagnosed to have that genetic inherited diseases, as mentioned by the deputy leader of the opposition team, that we are taking into consideration that that relates to our stakeholders, which is the society as a whole, and the status quo of that people who are prone to getting sick by genetic inheritance and by dietary habits. And other than that, the third speaker of the government also mentioned about, also did not consider there are cured patients of cancer, as I have explained before. And also, he explained that there are patients who have been, he did not actually try to, he did not explain that there are also people who have gained their lives back and can be considered as possible by not removing the subsidies given on medical treatments that need to prolong the patient's lives. And also, the third speaker had mentioned that that we should not, that they should remove subsidies on medical treatments that prolong life, because they need to bear thousands of money, which we have been analyzed in terms of economy itself, that the poor people, we have been we've been repeating about the stakeholders, society as a whole. We see, as also mentioned by the deputy leader of the opposition, that we come to account the high income people and the low income, the middle class people, that we are taking into consideration as a whole, that we are not abolishing subsidies, but we are reducing it for example, that the government might say that they should not remove, but we should remove by saying that if this year the subsidies is 100%, that we can gradually, as mentioned by the deputy leader of opposition, we can gradually decrease the number of percentage of the subsidies upon the people, which would benefit also this, which would stabilize the economy itself. And also, I'm summarizing it. We had also covered every single part of it, and that's all I think. Thank you.
The first speaker spent 7 minutes.
For the reply speech session, let's welcome the opposition leader, Mr. Muhammad Haikal Ramadan.
Mirza meeting.
Hi, I'm back for the reply speech. First of all, I would like to ask you, imagine this from the person's perspective. In the patient, you are having, you are a student, let's say, and you have stage 4 cancer, and then you're about to die. And then the doctor just pull the plug because you're just going to die. Don't you think that is a bit extreme for us, for the family, and for the healthcare workers themselves. The government are advocating patients to be pull the plug. I quote, pull the plug. We want people to do this because they want to cut costs, they want to increase the development, as the first speaker has said. We should think about the sorrow and despair the family would be when they knew the patient had a chance to live, even if it was a small chance. Miracles can happen. Why would we not let that chance to be portrayed? Just like when he said that there are COVID-19 patients who have cured from extreme cases. The government has not taken into account that these things can happen. Other than that, this is completely against human rights. What the government is trying to do opposes human rights. They are neglecting the society, our stakeholders here, and that is what the opposition side has been trying over and over again to oppose this motion, because it is very absurd, it is very wrong. The government has been repeating over and over again about ending the suffering for the plug, and when they were mostly talking about extreme cases, what they did not take into account was the people who were not in those extreme cases, but also was included in the people who can get subsidies from medical treatments that prolong life. Such as my second speaker had said about leukemia. It doesn't mean that you have a chance of dying, you still have a chance of living, but they did not take that into account. And they said they'll give subsidies, which is completely opposing the motion that they're going to remove the subsidies. What are the government trying to do right here? They're contradicting their own points. What are they trying to say? And this clearly shows we are trying to protect the well-being of society as a whole, while they are unable to understand the motion, because they said about the subsidies and whatnot. They've also been glorifying COVID-19 in this debate so far, and they do not give any categorization, and the points are all contradicting and messy. While outside has been protecting the well-being of the society, we think about the society and each people's rights as humans themselves. And that's what the government should take into account. And that clearly shows why the government side and the dedicators should side with us to oppose the motion that should remove the subsidies, to not remove the subsidies on medical treatments that prolong life. And this clearly shows that we win by a landslide. That's all from me. Thank you.
The third speaker spent 3 minutes and 3 seconds. Finally, here is the reply speech from the government team. Mr. Mahika Ramadan.
The word miracle comes out from the mouth of the big speaker, and that is the idea that the whole opposition lives on. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning again, the land of educators, that is Mr. Speaker, timekeeper, line of condition, land government. Well, the thing is, life is as much as we want it to be, it's not a miracle. It's a cold, harsh reality that we have to live in. And as stated by, but somehow stated by the opposition leader, the whole opposition leader stating that we only take into consideration the extreme cases and not think about people who can be cured. Let's first recap back to what the first speech from me was about. It's about removing subsidies from people who live on the life support, which is the extreme cases that you are talking about. We remove from the extreme cases. You are talking about people who can be cured. We are talking about people who have zero chance of being cured. And you said about, well, how do you know that they are going to die? You have to understand, advancement of medical research and science research has gone very far since the development of the first medicine. And we know that the percentage that the hospital can find about the rate of death, rate of life, the condition after being cured, the condition of death, everything is taken into account. And this is what is meant by the medical assessment. And after that, somehow the late speaker said about the subsidy being 100%. in which condition is subsidy is 100%. Because like my wife said, even with subsidy, lots and lots, I mean I say lots, majority of poor people which they seem to be defending, majority of those poor people still cannot afford those cost treatment, the treatment cost. And that is the reason that we have to encourage. It's encouraged. It has to be done. It has to be taught to the person, the family members, the one who cares about those patients, that death of those people is inevitable. They are going to die. It's been assessed. The percentage of death are nearing 90% or above. So hoping for their life, hoping for the cure, hoping for the treatment to be done, is like hoping for earthquake to not happen in a place that is very much deadly. And how about we look at a much bigger perspective? They say about family members. First, we have to understand that from a bigger perspective, let's not talk about family members of those people who are going to die. Think about family members of people who should have lived if they are given the hospital capacity provided, which are filled with people who are going to die anyways. For example, right, they say about kidney disease. But if those kidney failure, then if those kidney failure falls into extreme cases that we have. Okay. And also about the COVID-19. My Deputy Prime Minister specifically said that those are the people who are being treated. They're not about the vaccine. Vaccine is not that medical treatment that for life. We are talking about the life support, the equipment for that. That's why the government understands that this house believes that Malaysia should remove the subsidies on medical treatment that for long. Thank you.
Bye-bye.